Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
Now, we've all seen the headline. Study shows coffee drinkers live longer. And we've shared it within minutes to all of our friends who are the big coffee drinkers. But here's what just happened. You and I have confused correlation with causation, inductive observation with deductive proof. And you've just become a vector for misinformation. Right now, millions of people are doing the exact same thing, spreading beliefs that they think are facts, making decisions based on patterns that don't exist, all while feeling absolutely certain they're thinking clearly. We live in a world drowning in information, but starving for truth. Every day, you're presented with hundreds of claims, arguments, and patterns. Now, some are solid, however, most are not. And the difference between knowing which is which and just guessing, what do? That's the difference between making good decisions and stumbling through life confused about why things keep going wrong. Most of us have never been taught the difference between deductive and inductive reasoning. We stumble through life applying deductive certainty to inductive guesses, treating observations as proven facts and wondering why our conclusions keep failing us. But once we understand which type of reasoning a situation demands, we gain something powerful, the ability to calibrate our confidence appropriately, recognize manipulation, and build every other thinking skill on a foundation that actually works. By the end of this episode, you'll possess a practical toolkit for improving your logical reasoning, 4 core strategies, 1 quick win technique, and a practice exercise that you can start today that will help you make a decision today. This is episode 2 of Thinking 101, a new 8-part series that I'm putting out here onto YouTube free of charge to everybody on essential thinking skills most of us have never learned in school. Links to all the episodes are in the description below or over in the show notes. So, when we say logical reasoning, what are we talking about? What does it entail? At its core, there are 2 fundamental ways humans draw conclusions, and you're using both right now without consciously choosing between them. Now, deductive reasoning moves from the general principles to be more specific conclusions with absolute certainty. If the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. So, for example, all mammals have hearts. Dogs are mammals. Therefore, dogs have hearts. There's no wiggle room. If those first 2 statements are true, the conclusion is guaranteed. This is in the realm of mathematics and formal logic and established law. Now, inductive reasoning works in reverse. It builds from specific observations towards general principles with varying degrees of probability. You observe a pattern and infer a likely explanation. So, for example, I've seen 1,000 swans, and the ones I've seen were all white. Therefore, all swans are probably white. Now, this feels certain, but it's actually just highly probable based on limited evidence. Now, history has proved this reasoning actually was wrong when black swans were discovered in Australia. Both are tools. Now, neither is better. The question is which tool fits the job and whether you're using it correctly. So why does this matter? Because across every domain of life, this reasoning confusion is costing us. In our social media consumption, we are drowning in inductive reasoning disguised as deductive proof. Researchers at MIT found that fake news spreads 10 times faster than accurate reporting. Why? because misleading content exploits this confusion. You see a viral post claiming such as, "New study proves smartphones causes depression in teenagers," with graphs and official-looking citations. What you're actually seeing is inductive correlation presented as deductive causation. Research has observed that depressed teenagers often used smartphones more hours a day. But that doesn't prove smartphones cause the depression. And this is where it gets truly terrifying. And I need you to hear this carefully. In 2015, researchers tried to replicate 100 psychology studies published in top scientific journals. These are the citations that get referenced in all of these studies when we try to make claims on social media or when people are trying to convince you to do something, buy something, or take an action. However, in trying to replicate these peer-reviewed studies, only 36% held up. Now, I'm going to repeat this. Nearly 2/3 of peer-reviewed published research could not be reproduced. Now, on these false studies, they're still being cited, still shaping policy, still being shared as science proves. You're building your worldview on a foundation where 64% of the bricks could be made up of air. In our personal relationships, we constantly make inductive references about people's intentions and treat them as deductive facts. Your partner forgets to text you back 3 times this week. You observe the pattern, inductively infer, "Oh, they must be losing interest," then act with deductive certainty, becoming distant, accusatory, defensive. But what if those 3 instances had 3 different explanations? What if the pattern we detected isn't actually a pattern at all? We say "you always" or "you never" based on 3 data points. We end relationships over patterns that never existed. So why didn't anyone teach us this difference between inductive and deductive reasoning? Traditional schooling focuses on teaching us what to think: facts, formulas, memorization, established knowledge. Deductive reasoning gets attention in math classes, such as the mechanical process of solving an equation. If you do step 1 and step 2, you get an answer in step 3. Inductive reasoning gets buried in science classes, completely disconnected from actual decision making. We graduated with facts crammed into our heads, but no framework for evaluating new claims that we are constantly being presented day in and day out. But that changes now. So, you now understand the 2 reasoning systems and why mixing them up is costing you. Now let's fix this. These 5 strategies will give you immediate control over your logical reasoning, starting with the most fundamental skills and building to a technique you can use in your next conversation when someone is trying to present information to persuade you. So, first up, you got to learn how to label, how to understand and recognize the reasoning types. So, first one up is label your reasonings. The first step to improving is becoming just aware of which system you're using, and that to be quite honest, that we rarely stop to check. We flip between deductive and inductive thinking dozens of times per day without even realizing it. You see your colleague get promoted after working late, and you instantly conclude that working late leads to promotion. That's inductive. But if you're treating it like deductive rule, like if I work late, I will get promoted, the moment you label which type you're using, you gain control. You understand the differences. So first off, start with a daily reasoning journal. At the end of each day, write down 3 conclusions you made today about people, work, news, something you read in social media, a text you got, anything. For each conclusion, ask, what evidence led me to this conclusion? If it's general rules applied to specific, like all mammals have hearts, dogs are mammals, you used deduction. If it's a pattern from observation, I've seen this 3 times, you used induction. Label each one of those conclusions in that journal D for deductive, I for inductive. This creates conscious awareness. You're likely to find that 80 to 90% of your daily reasoning is inductive, but you've been treating it as deductive certainty. 4, when you catch yourself saying always, never, definitively, stop, don't use those very defining, definitive, conclusive words like always and never. Ask, is this deductive certainty or inductive probability? That single pause causes everything. And 5, practice in real time during conversations. When someone makes a claim, silently label it in your head. Is this deductive or is this inductive? Weak reasoning becomes obvious instantly. In step 6, after 1 week of journaling you've been identifying, review your entries. Patterns emerge in your reasoning. Errors, specific topics where you constantly overstate certainty or people you make assumptions about. This awareness is absolutely foundational for you to improve your reasoning skills. So, number 1, label. Number 2, calibrate your confidence. Once you've labeled your reasoning type, the next step is to match your certainty level to the strength of the evidence. Here's where most people fail. They feel 100% certain about conclusions built on just 3 observations. Your brain doesn't naturally calibrate. It defaults to, oh, this feels true, therefore it is true. But when you explicitly assign probability levels to inductive conclusions, you stop making the most common reasoning error, treating patterns as proven facts. So let's walk through this. 1, for every inductive conclusion, assign a percentage. Given these 5 observations, I'm 60% confident this pattern is real. Never use 100% for inductive reasoning. Why? Because by definition, inductive conclusions are probabilistic, not certain. 2, use this language and shift the conversations. Replace the "you always ignore my suggestions" with, I've brought up ideas in the last 2 meetings and haven't heard any feedback, which makes me feel about 40% confident there's a communication pattern worth discussing here. Replace "this definitely works" with, well, from what I've seen, I'm 70% confident this approach is effective. Number 3, create certainty thresholds for actions. Decide, for instance, that you need a 70% confidence before you make any major decisions based on inductive reasoning. This prevents impulsive moves based on weak patterns. Below 50%, keep observing. Above 80%, it's worth acting on. Number 4, keep a confidence log for 1 week. Write your predictions with probability levels. 80% confident it'll rain tomorrow. 60% confident this project will succeed. Then check if you were right. This trains your calibration. You'll discover whether you're overstating or understating your certainty, and then you can adjust. 5, when someone presents definitive claims based on inductive evidence, ask them, what certainty level would you assign to that? Is it 60%? Is it 90%? And then watch them realize they've been overstating their case. This question immediately disrupts manipulation. Now, next up, hunt for contradictions. This is number 3 of the 5. Hunt for contradictions. Your brain naturally seeks confirming evidence and ignores contradictions. This strategy forces you to do the opposite. Confirmation bias is the enemy of good inductive reasoning. Once you believe something, your brain becomes heat seeking missile for evidence that supports it. The only antidote is to actively hunt for evidence that contradicts your conclusion, your position, your perspective. Now, let's recognize this. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's the difference between being right and feeling right. Let me rephrase that. It's the difference between being right and feeling right. Let's walk through this. 1. For every inductive conclusion you reach, set yourself a 24-hour contradiction hunt. Your job is to find at least 2 pieces of evidence that contradicts your conclusion. If you believe, for instance, that remote work increases productivity, you must find credible sources claiming the opposite. 2. Use search terms designed to find the opposites. Search for things like remote work decreases productivity study or evidence against intermittent fasting. Force feed yourself the other side. Google's algorithms want to confirm your beliefs. It's learned your beliefs and it's going to continually to reinforce it. You actively have to fight against the algorithm. 3. Create a contradiction column in your reasoning journal. For each conclusion, the left column, list contradicting evidence in a right column. If you cannot find any contradictions, you are not looking hard enough, or you are in an echo chamber. Number 4, in debate or discussion, argue the opposite position for 5 minutes. So if you're arguing with somebody, just say, hey, let's flip sides. You argue that position, I'll argue the other position, and let's do this for 5 minutes. Seriously, if you believe X, you should be able to spend 5 minutes making the best possible case for not X. Now, this breaks confirmation bias and reveals holes in your reasoning you could not see before. And number 5, before sharing anything on social media, spend 2 minutes actively searching for contradicting evidence. Search for things like the claim is debunked or the claim is false. Look for the opposite perspective. And if you find credible contradictions, just pause. The claim is disputed. Either just don't share it or share it with context like, interesting claim, though this source disputes this because, and be honest. This habit trains you to think critically before becoming a misinformation vector. And next up, question the sample. Question the sample. Most bad inductive reasoning fails the sample size test, and almost no one thinks to ask. Here's the manipulation technique you need to spot. Someone shows you 3 examples and declares a universal truth. I know 3 people who get rich with crypto. Therefore, crypto makes everyone rich. 3 examples. There's 7 million people. Your brain treats this as evidence until you ask about the total number. The question alone dismantles 90% of weak arguments. So, let's walk through this. 1. Every time someone makes an inductive claim, ask out loud, how many observation is that based on? 3? 30? 3,000? The number matters enormously. 1 person's experience is an anecdote. 10 similar experiences starts to suggest a pattern. 100 becomes meaningful. 1,000 builds real confidence. Number 2, learn the rough sample sizes for different certainty levels. For causal patterns, that's like 10 to 20 observations. For moderate confidence, let's call it 100 to 500. For high confidence, it's about 1,000. For scientific certainty, it should be north of 10,000. 5 examples claiming certainty, that's weak, and now you know. Number 3, always check the total number, whether it's called sample size, denominator, or population. When someone shows examples of a cites a study, ask out of how many total. 3 testimonials means nothing without knowing that it's 3 out of 10, 30% success rate, or 3 out of 10,000, a 0.03% success rate. When reading headlines like study shows X, click through and find the sample size. The study of 12 people is not the same as a study of 12,000 people. The total number is usually hidden because it reveals how weak the claim really is. And 4, in your own reasoning, track your sample. Before concluding, this service at this restaurant is always slow. Count. How many times have you been there? 3. Well, that's not always. That's barely any data. You need at least 10 visits across different times and days before you can claim a pattern. And 5, challenge yourself. Can you find a larger sample that contradicts your small sample? If your 3 experiences clash with 3,000 online reviews saying the opposite, which should you trust? The larger sample wins unless you have specific reasons to believe it's biased. And next up is the one-word test. This is a quick win. This is a really simple one. It's the one-word test. Here's a technique you can implement in the next 30 seconds that will immediately improve your logical reasoning. Stop using absolute language. Every time you're about to say always or never, catch yourself and replace it with usually or rarely. Every time, and here I am, I'm using the word ever, you're about to say definitively or certainly, use probably or likely. That single word swap trains your brain to think probabilistically. It acknowledges that most of your reasoning is inductive based on patterns, not guarantees. And here's the bonus. People will perceive you as being more credible because you are not overstating your case. Try it right now in your next conversation. Watch how often you reach for absolute language and how much clearer your thinking becomes when you don't use it. Now, the most effective way to internalize these strategies is through practice with real-world scenarios. So, here I'm going to walk you through what I call the pattern detective challenge. So, step 1, find 3 claims from your social media feed today. Just open up Facebook, go to Twitter, Threads, wherever. Anything that declares a pattern, trend, or truth. Health advice, political claims, life advice, product recommendations. Now, for each claim, identify, is this deductive or inductive reasoning? Write it down, put it in your log. Most will be inductive disguised as deductive, such as, this supplement will boost your energy. Sounds deductive, but it's based on inductive observations. Now, 3, if inductive, assess the sample size. How many observations is this based on? One person's testimonial, a study, how many participants? Is the sample representative of the broader population, or is it just already pre-screened for a very targeted set of people? 4, assign a certainty level. Give the sample size and the quality of evidence. What probability would you assign to this claim? 30%, 60%, 90%? Come up with something. Be honest. Most will be below 70%. 5, now hunt for contradictions. Spend 5 minutes, just 5 minutes on Google, finding evidence that contradicts the claim. Can you find it? Now, how credible is that? Does it have a larger sample size than the original claim? And 6, this is the interesting step here. Rewrite the claim with calibrated language. So change, intermittent fasting will make you healthier too, and rewrite it as, for studies of X number of people, intermittent fasting appears to improve some health markers for some people. Though individual results vary, confidence level 65%. Now that recasts that whole block of information that you were consuming in social media. Now the next step, step 7 is share your analysis with somebody, your spouse, your friend, coworker, and walk them through your reasoning process. Teaching others good reasoning reinforces your own learning and reveals gaps you didn't notice, and it helps other people recognize gaps in their own reasoning. And 8, repeat this exercise 3 times per week for a month. Just take 30 minutes, maybe over lunch, take a notebook with you, but by the end of that month, automatic evaluation will become second nature. You won't need to think about it. It will just happen. Now, what's the benefit? Why are we going through this whole process? The journey of improving your logical reasoning is ongoing, but the rewards compound quickly. You become nearly impossible to manipulate. When you can spot the difference between inductive observation and deductive proof, 90% of manipulation tactics stop working. The car salesman pitch falls flat. The political ad looks transparent. The social media rage bait loses its power. Your relationships improve dramatically. When you stop saying, "you always," and start saying, "I've noticed this 3 times," you create space for understanding instead of defensiveness. Conflicts become conversations. Assumptions become questions. Your professional credibility skyrockets. Leaders who can distinguish between strong deductive arguments and weak inductive patterns make better strategic decisions. When you speak with calibrated confidence, saying things like, "oh, I'm 70% confident," instead of "I'm absolutely certain," people will trust your judgment more, not less. You build a foundation for every other thinking skill: spotting logical fallacies, evaluating evidence, resisting cognitive biases, and asking better questions. All of these depend on understanding which type of reasoning you're using and which type the situation demands. You're not just learning thinking skills. You're installing psychological armor that most people don't even know exists. And in the world where manipulation is the norm, our day-to-day world today, that makes you dangerous to anyone trying to control you. Now, each week on Substack, I go deeper, sharing some personal examples, failed experiments, things I stumbled on, and lessons I couldn't fit into this video. It's like the director's cut. Link is below or over in the show notes. So, now, this was episode 2 of Thinking 101, the essential skills that no one ever taught you, which is an 8-part foundation series where each episode unlocks the next skill. If you missed episode 1, which was why thinking skills matter, now more than ever, start there. Link is below. It explains why this entire skill set has become essential. This is episode 2. Next episode is episode 3, causal thinking. Beyond correlation, causal thinking, very important. You'll learn how to distinguish between things that simply happen together and things that actually cause each other, transforming how you evaluate health claims and business strategies and relationship patterns. Hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss any future episodes. Also, can I ask a favor? Hit the like and notification bell. It helps with the algorithm so others can see our content. And while you're at it, why not share this video with a coworker or maybe even a family member who you think could benefit from improving their reasoning thinking? Because right now, while you're watching this, someone just shared a lie that felt like truth. The only question is, will you be able to tell the difference? We will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, this has been the Killer Innovation Show on the Innovators Network.